Hey, it's the Deputy Podcast, the official podcast of the Oconee County Sheriff's Office SC. I'm Corporal Jimmy Watt, and we are glad that you are with us today. Make sure, if you're watching on YouTube, of course, to like and subscribe, and make sure to sign up for notifications as well. In terms of our podcasts, we're on a lot of the podcast directories, such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts, too. Make sure to download our OCSO app, and check us out on social media, Facebook and Instagram and X. And go to our website, oconeelaw.com. A lot of good news and information is there as well. And honored to be joined by Corporal Billy Lee. A few years ago, Billy and I did a podcast together on boating safety. Of course, Billy is one of our full-time Marine Unit deputies here at the Oconee County Sheriff's Office. And I know the weather has been warm, and it's going to get warmer. Memorial Day's approaching very quickly, Billy. A lot of folks already out on the water, and that's just going to increase as time goes along. So we thought it'd be a good idea to talk a little bit about boating safety, and Billy's going to have some good information as well for you, including a couple of laws that have been passed in recent years that you're going to want to know about. But Billy, how did you, I was going to say, how did you get assigned to the Marine Unit? But talk about your progression of getting involved with the Marine Unit and kind of what led you to be a part of this unit.
Yes, sir. So started here at the Sheriff's Office 7 years ago.
Right.
Started on road patrol just like everybody, but I had a real passion to be on the water, to be involved with the Marine team. That's actually one of the reasons I came here to the Sheriff's Office, was to be a part of the Marine team. I had the opportunity to join our auxiliary team about 2 years in. We'll get into that in a little bit, I believe.
Right.
But I had an opportunity to work on our auxiliary team. About a year after that, I had an opportunity to actually join the full-time team. Our full-time team consists of 2 people. And so I had that opportunity to join that full-time team. This would be my my 4th summer as full-time, 5th time a part of the team.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when Billy and I had recorded the podcast a few years ago, you had really not been on the Marine Unit all that long, I think. It
might have been the first full-time year.
Yeah. Billy had mentioned something about the history of the Marine Unit, and we want to kind of share that with you today. So excuse me for kind of looking down at some notes here, but there's quite a bit of information to share. The Marine Unit began in earnest back in 2001, and as Billy said, it really kind of started off with an 8-man auxiliary unit. I think there were maybe a couple of boats at that particular time as well. And then back in 2017, Oconee County Council approved 2 full-time Marine Unit officers to be out on the water. There is still, of course, an auxiliary unit as well, but that kind of leads me to my next question. We know that there's full-time officers, there's an auxiliary unit. How many boats are currently being employed by the Marine Unit, and how many deputies are involved either full-time or even as part of the auxiliary unit?
Yeah, so we have 2 full-time deputies that are assigned to the Marine Unit. Lucas Watts and I both hold those positions. We're full-time May through September on the water. And then we have a 10-man auxiliary team. You mentioned that we were 8-man. We jumped up to a 10-man team actually last year. Just with the responsibilities of the Marine team, the growth that we've seen on the water, we made the decision to jump up to a 10-man team. So the auxiliary team is not working full-time. Those deputies are assisting out on the weekends. So they get an opportunity to come out and work the weekends, the holidays, some of the extra events. So they're coming out and assisting with that. So we do run a 10-man auxiliary team with the 2-man full-time team. We have 3 boats assigned to the Marine units. It's 2 2017 vessels and a 2013 vessel. All 3 of those are Pioneers. Those are made here in South Carolina, so we're trying to represent South Carolina. But we're very pleased with those.
Absolutely. It used to be a case with the auxiliary team before the 2 full-time positions were created, that a lot of times the Marine Unit could only really be out on weekends, maybe between Memorial Day and Labor Day, kind of in that what's considered the 100 days of summer. But with the 2 full-time members, when that was assigned back in 2017, plus the auxiliary unit, that really gave you all the opportunity to be out on the water a whole lot more, not just on the weekends, but really it almost became like you're on the water almost 7 days a week, I guess, right?
So like I mentioned, there has been a ton of growth, even in the 5 years that I've been a part of the Marine team. I have seen so much growth in those 5 years just on the water. And so the need to be out there especially during the week, has grown. We do get calls for service during the week. We get complaints of reckless boating, stuff like that during the week. So we're trying to patrol not just on those weekends and holidays, but during the week as well. So my schedule is a little different. Normally it's going to be 4 to 5 days a week, but there are weeks during the summer where it is 7 days a week. Holiday weeks, we're very busy. We're out there just trying to cut down on some of that.
Right, and of course, I guess the primary lakes that you patrol are, of course, Kiwi and Hartwell, and even Jocassee too, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Kiwi is going to be our main primary patrolled lake. We do get up to Jocassee pretty frequent, and then Hartwell as well. We have a great relationship with some other agencies. We have a communication with Anderson County on Hartwell. They're patrolling Hartwell daily. They have a full-time team on Hartwell.
Right.
So Hartwell is getting controlled. DNR is out there as well. Like I said, great relationship with those guys as well. But Kiwi is probably going to be our main concern.
Right. Corporal Billy Lee is with us on the Deputy Podcast as we discuss the Sheriff's Office Marine Unit. You're going to see Corporal Lee and a lot of our deputies out there. If you're out boating this summer, even if you're boating right now, good chance you're going to see Corporal Lee and a lot of our folks out there. So make sure to say hello to them. And that kind of brings me kind of to my next question, because the Marine Unit really has a couple of different functions, and I think two primary functions for the Marine Unit is obviously it's boating safety, it's enforcement of laws, but also you're in that forging relationship to build a safer Oconee mode. You're out there talking to boaters, you're out there talking to people who are out on the water and kind of providing some education, building relationships, getting to know one another. So kind of talk about how that kind of works hand in hand, if you will, sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. When we take a new deputy that's a part of the Marine team in and we start training them for the summer, there's two main things we look at. It's education and enforcement. And so when we talk about that and we talk about violations on the water, a lot of times we want to take that educational approach. Somebody may not know how the law works, or maybe is new to boating. We want to take the opportunity to educate. Now, there are times where enforcement needs to be
right.
that course.
Right.
And so we really try to take that time to differentiate those. And I kind of look at it as registration maybe versus boating under the influence.
Right.
Registration can be a educational piece.
Right.
Maybe they don't know the process on going through how to get their boat registered. So we maybe take the opportunity to educate. But when it comes to boating under the influence, that is going to be a no doubt enforcement action. We don't have any level of education for that. That's going to be an enforcement side.
And of course, that is an arrestable offense, just
yes,
like
sir.
driving under the influence on the
Absolutely.
roads as well. So let's kind of play a little scenario here. I have never had a boat in my life. I'll just be honest with you. I've been out on boats, but never have owned one. So let's say I come to you and I say, Billy, I bought myself a brand new boat, going to start getting out on the water, but I need to know some things right off the bat. Number one, in terms of making my boat compliant with the law, what are some of the things that I need to do? First of all, in terms of the boat itself, and we'll get to kind of what's required for people in a second, but in terms of the boat itself, what's going to be required for that boat to make it not only safe but also compliant with the law? What are a few things?
Yeah, so we obviously recommend doing a safety check before you go out each time on the water. We do that with our vessels. We teach our auxiliary team to do a safety check before we go out on the water. You want to make sure all lights are working, want to make sure that motor's working, kill switch, all that stuff is intact with the boat. That way you're compliant with Coast Guard law as well as state law. And so we want to make sure all that stuff is compliant. When it comes to equipment on that vessel, there are some things that are required. I believe that was the second part of your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so there's four main pieces of safety equipment that are required on the vessels here in South Carolina. The number one, and Jimmy, I don't mind elaborating on this a little bit more,
Right.
but the number one piece of equipment is going to be obviously a PFD, your life jackets. You have to have one per person on each boat. And we strongly encourage to be wearing that. We teach all of our, when we do career days and stuff, we're teaching the kids in the schools that is very, very important to be wearing life jackets out there on the water.
Right.
But you got to have a life jacket for each person on that boat. Some of the other pieces of equipment is obviously going to be a fire extinguisher. You got to have a fire extinguisher on board. You got to have some kind of sound producing device. Most of the boats these days are going to be equipped with a horn. A whistle is acceptable. Like I said, most boats are already equipped with that. And the last piece is a Type 4 throwable device. A lot of times our children in schools don't know what that is, and we'll pull one out and show them. They're like, oh, I knew what that was. But it's usually the square float that you see.
Right.
And that's just for emergencies. Obviously, if somebody falls overboard, they don't have their life jacket on, we can throw that to them. So,
It's just kind of interesting to think about, and I've kind of made mention of this before. In Oconee County, we're kind of basically an island if you think about it. You pretty well have to cross a body of water to get into our county. And we've got everything here in Oconee, beautiful mountains, but we've got beautiful lakes as well. And that kind of goes back to the point you were making a little bit earlier about the importance of safety. The water is such an integral part of our county and the economy as well. And the bottom line is we want everybody to be safe, and we want everybody to enjoy recreation out there on the water. And that's where not only our Marine unit comes in, but it kind of goes back to something you were talking about earlier with the relationships you have with DNR. Anderson County Sheriff's Office has their Marine unit. I think Coast Guard Auxiliary is part of that as well, and certainly they're involved in that. I guess it was probably maybe last year in which through a grant through Duke Energy, we were able to purchase some radios. About $20,000 was the price tag to supply to DNR as well as Highway Patrol on the road, of course, but to be able to communicate with each other in terms of enforcement or emergencies. So talk about that importance of those agencies being involved and those relationships that you've been able to build with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jimmy, you've already mentioned we have 3 major lakes here in Oconee County. We have Kiwi, Hartwell, and Jocassee. All 3 of those lakes are patrolled by the DNR. We have a great relationship with those guys. We work during the boating season and during off season with those guys. So our relationship is just phenomenal with them. Communication, like you mentioned with the radios, we're getting to a point now where we can communicate with them very quickly and respond to the same calls. We're not having to play phone tag or nothing like that. So
Right.
we're getting to that point where the communication is definitely improving. But DNR is on all 3 of those lakes as well. When it comes to Hartwell, our relationship with Anderson County is building. Danny McGowan works in Anderson County. He's running that Marine team over there, doing great things. Our relationship is building with them. We have some stuff planned for the summer to work with them. And when it comes to Jocassee, like I already mentioned, DNR is up there. And other relationships that are building is Corps of Engineers does have law enforcement on Hartwell. Not a great relationship with them, not a bad relationship, but we don't communicate with them quite as much as we do the other agencies. But we do have a relationship with Corps of Engineers. And then Georgia DNR, we do communicate with them a little bit. They have some jurisdiction over on the Hartwell side, on Tougaloo.
Right.
So our relationship with them is decent as well. Like I said, no complaints at all with any of the agencies we work with.
Absolutely right. Corporal Billy Lee is our guest on the Deputy Podcast today as we're talking about water safety. As we said before, of course, a lot of boats out on the water now. That's going to increase as we get into, of course, Memorial Day. As we're recording this, Memorial Day is in just in a few weeks, and we thank Billy for coming and kind of sharing some things with us today. I guess also a part of some of that enforcement too is the fact that sometimes you're able to, and I know the Marine unit has done this before, sometimes you're able to park your boat and be able to get out on land and go and build those relationships and do enforcement as well. Do you still do a lot of that, I guess, on the ground type relationship building and enforcement? And
Yeah, absolutely. So we were actually at South Cove County Park this morning doing some training.
Right.
So we have a relationship with Parks and Rec as well. I'm not sure if they have any law enforcement officers, but just the actual park rangers, relationship with them. So we have county parks on Lake Kiwi. Great opportunity to get out and patrol those on foot.
Right.
We work in close conjunction with them on doing foot patrols. Fall Creek is another area that we're doing a lot of foot patrols at. We get some calls for service up there. Parking is kind of an issue at Fall Creek, so we do get out and foot patrol those as well. No alcohol allowed in any of our county parks, so we're out patrolling looking for that kind of stuff. But yeah, we still do foot patrols.
Absolutely. You mentioned, we're going to wrap this up with this question. You mentioned that kind of off the air that there were a couple of laws that have been passed here recently. One, I think you said last year, one maybe a few years ago. Probably a lot of boaters may be aware of, but for people who perhaps are just getting started enjoying recreation on the water, they might not be aware of those. So what were those laws? And I guess they were passed down by the legislature in Columbia, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So in 2022, one of our number one complaints we get is wake law violations. We get a lot of calls for service on that. And we took a great step in the right direction. I think there's still room for improvement on this law. But in 2022, the wake law extended from 50 foot to 100 foot. Now, the law still stands for people swimming. It's still 50 foot. But when it comes to other boats and docks, that length for that violation increased from 50 foot to 100 foot now. So basically what that means is if you are putting off wake, you have to be 100 foot or further away from a dock or another boat. So like I said, a step in the right direction for that law.
Right.
And then if it comes to boats that are ballasted, which means they're filling their boat with water to put off more wake. Basically what that people do that for is wake surfing.
Right.
It's a great hobby out there. People enjoy it.
Right.
And so that is actually 200 foot. And so like I said, taking steps in that right direction, still
Right.
room for improvement. And then 2023, another law passed. Prior to that, you did not have to have any form of education to operate a boat. Jimmy, you mentioned you never owned a boat.
Right.
You could go buy a boat and go out that day and operate it. But in 2023, legislature passed a law. If you are born July 1st, 2007 or after, now you have to have some form of education. So we may get the question that's, well, how much is the education, right? Well, DNR actually offers a free education. It's about a 6-hour course they offer. I believe it's online and in person. And so that's one form of it. We actually here in South Carolina accept other forms of education. If you have a boater's education in another state,
Right.
we accept that as well. Coast Guard offers some, NASBLA offers some. So if you have an education through one of those, we accept that as well. But strongly encourage anybody to get an education when it comes to boating because, we want to be safe out there this summer.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I guess DNR does offer hunting classes as well, kind of
Yes,
off
sir.
topic here. But I don't know if you know this or not, Billy, but if you're born after July 1st, 2007, and you take that class, are you given some type of card or something that says if you were to come up and say, hey, if you had your boater education class, is there a card or something that is supplied that you can show like yourself or one of our auxiliary deputies?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Once you complete that course with DNR, they actually mail you a hard copy in the mail. So you can carry it around just like a driver's license.
Good deal. Good deal. Make sure you carry that in your wallet or your purse if you're out there boating, especially after July 1st, 2007. And you're absolutely right. I could buy one because I was born way before July 1st, 2007. That's for sure. The gray hair is always the key giveaway. Well, Billy, we thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for educating us. And if you're going to be out on the waters, especially Lake Huey, but Joe Cassie and Hartwell, you're probably going to see Billy. Some of our boats and deputies out there, so make sure to say hello to them when you see them. And of course, if you've been watching this podcast on YouTube, hey, like and subscribe. Sign up for those notifications too. Whenever we produce content, you can be aware of that. Of course, on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and X. Go to our website, oconeelaw.com. A lot of good news and information there. Download that OCSO app and make sure to catch us as well on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and many of the podcasting directories as well. That's going to do it for this edition of the Deputy Podcast, the official podcast of the Oconee County Sheriff's Office SC.